Welcome to the 12-Step Recovery Evolution podcast. Visit recoveryevolution.co.uk for more episodes, helpful resources and links to our social media. Also visit the site for information on how you can attend a future Zoom session or workshop live. Thank you.
Morning everyone, good to see everybody. It's a lovely day, a bit overcast, but still got a big list of things to do. Amber, when you were saying that, I was thinking of this serenity prayer that I learned that might actually be good for your group, and it goes like this: God grant me the serenity to change the things I cannot accept. That's it. Anyway, I want to start it off this morning, just before we get going, with just reading the promises from page 84 of the big book. Because again, we've been doing a bit of work around that, and it's kind of nice to know that if I'm going to put all this effort in and make all these changes, is what am I going to get out of it? And a perfectly valid question. And it's saying, oh, it starts back on this page, doesn't it? If we are, sorry, it's page 83, the bottom of page 83 of the big book, it says, if we are painstaking. Now, some people say that as painstaking, you know, as drug addicts and alcoholics, we like to feel good all the time. I'm usually trying to avoid pain, but this is sort of saying, look, if we're willing to kind of not keep trying to avoid it and start dealing with it and maybe working through it. So he says, if we're painstaking instead of pains trying to run away and avoid and not feel. It says about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom. Remember, this is the experience of all the people that have done this. And I'm pretty sure that all the people in long-term, short-term, early recovery that have tried this is their experience. They concur with this, these results, these consequences to these actions of following these principles. It says we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom. That's not an old freedom. It's not a freedom that you've probably ever known before. This is a new freedom and a new happiness, not something that you're accustomed to. Remember, this is something that we've discovered that's different. And that's why we didn't know what it was before we did it, and why you have to have the experience, because you've got no real reference of what it's talking about until you've done it, because it's new. It's going to be something completely new, awakening to the people that do this. He said, we will not regret the past. How's that possible, I hear you ask, doing these steps? We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. Do you know what? That's a big one, really, and people should really pay attention to that, because I meet a lot of people in long-term recovery and they really still regret the past. Especially people with children, they still feel very guilty. And see, the thing is, when you feel very guilty, you start acting on that guilt, and you start being nice, not because that you're being nice because you want to be nice. Obviously, you do want to be nice, but you're being nice to try and ease the guilt, and that still becomes a selfish expression, and it can make children very angry because they know it. So that's a top tip right there. Make sure that you're still not regretting the past. We will comprehend, which means understand, the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear, and we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us, and we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. I hear you ask, are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Here's the promise. They will always materialize if we work for them. If we don't, the result is nil. So just wanted to start us off on that. and we can open it up. So this week is an opportunity to ask questions on the things that we've been talking about up to this point, or if you have any other questions that you want to ask, and I will try. I'm not a therapist. I'm a 12-stepper. I'm kind of like the spiritual stuff. So my answers will probably be based on that wherever possible. So if anybody's got a question, they can stick their hand up and Fox or unmute you. Off to a flying start then. Connie's got her hand up, I can see.
And Adam. Adam first. Sorry, Connie, I'll get to you shortly.
Before I ask the question, Fox, Alt and Y, is that right to lift my hand up?
No, we're raising it. I sent out a little thingy. You click a button on your keyboard, or Alt and Y for you.
Yeah,
put your hand up.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lester, I just wanted to ask. Obviously, been practicing the program for 30 years now, 29, 30 years, and in hindsight, looking back, is there sort of three sort of misconceptions about the program, or three, practices that you did that was opposed to the program? Really, I'm asking the question just to try and draw from your 30 years worth of experience. And is there sort of did you catch that, Lester?
Not really understanding what you're saying, mate.
So, in your 29 years in the program, is there sort of a top three sort of misconceptions that you've had about the program that you kind of, after a period of time, gone, no, it was that? Like, have you had revelation later on about sort of, because obviously there's a lot in there, isn't there? And I'm just trying to draw.
Well, that's definitely the thing about the program. It takes time to learn it and time to understand it. And like we were sort of saying about that, a bit of confusion about when you say to people, look, it's going to take you a couple of years to get before you get to the success. It's kind of like building a house. You can't really, say to build a house takes 6 months. If you work hard and follow the directions that have been laid down by all the builders and, construction people before, if you're a good team of builders and you do everything right and, you overcome all the problems and you're very proficient, it takes you 6 months to build that house. But if they all sit around drinking tea and coffee and wandering around, then it's not going to take 6 months. It's going to take longer to build that house. And so that's when I say that, 2 years isn't really an exact number. It's just giving people an idea of saying, look, if you don't do this work, then you're never going to get there. But even using the house analogy, one thing that I do notice with people in recovery, in early recovery, is that they're living in a very derelict, fallen down house. And I think that's because that word condemnation, that they often feel very condemned because they have been, by their illness, they've been behaving not in ways that people like you to behave. And, I don't need anybody to tell me what I was doing was wrong. I kind of knew that. And so I was very condemned. And, the word condemn, when you condemn a building, it means it's unfit for habitation. So people aren't really living in their best life. And of course they want their best life. We all want our best life. We all want that lovely building to be living in. And it takes time to do that. So, people, I can often see that they forget that underneath every house is foundations. But the foundations are underground. The foundations are in you. So my first top tip for anybody would be really make sure that you're not building on sand. Because I think a lot of people I've observed over the years, and again, the people that tend to call me in long-term recovery, and again, not everybody calls me, but, over the over each year, I get quite a few people that have been in long-term recovery that they've got a big house, and they say this quite often, is that, you know, I've got a pretty good relationship, I've got a nice job, I've got children, I've got a car, I've got a house, I've got all the things that you think that you'd want from recovery, but I feel like I can't cope and I'm coming undone on the inside. And see, that's the foundation. They've not got a good solid foundation. So, you know, like I say, I like to think of myself as a bit of a foundations man. You know, I like to try and keep reminding people of the foundations, but they can get a bit of the hump about that and get a bit angry at it because they want to be putting the roof on and the new floor, and, you know, they want it to look, they want everyone to see their lives getting better. And again, when you listen, it's like, mate, you're building on sand. And if you keep building on that, you're going to come crashing down at some point. Look, I don't know what brick or what piece of equipment you're going to put in your house that's going to topple it over, but guaranteed it will topple over at some point if you don't deal with that big crack in your foundation. And again, I believe the foundation is the program. We do this, you know, when we do this group around this stuff, I do this sort of chart. I draw a picture of like a skyscraper, and then I draw a line on the bottom, just up a little bit, and I put 2%. And then on top of that, I put 98%. And I say that 2% represents your foundation. That represents your recovery. And that 98% represents everything else in your life. Now, you should be spending at least 2% of your life on your recovery, because that 98% rests on your recovery. If you take that 2% away, the 98% is going to fall down. So it's making sure that you've got a good recovery. You know, that's what it says. When we put our recovery first, then the rest of our life works out. In the big book, it says it in this way. It says, when the spiritual malady sorted out, which means we've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, when this relationship sorted out, then we straighten out mentally and physically, and the rest happens. In the Bible, it says, first seek the kingdom of God, which is inside yourself. And then it says all that other 98% will just be added to you. Which, funny enough, was kind of like, me and Pauline did a really good praying and meditating and seeking God this morning. And that was kind of also the one of the focuses of our prayer that come to us this morning about this. Just first seek the kingdom, just trust in this process. Just don't ever underestimate how important your recovery is. The rest of your life rests on it. So that's just one important thing. And if that's all right, I'll leave that one there.
Thank you. Up next, I've got Connie.
Morning, Lester.
Morning, Connie.
Morning. You might have covered this already, but I might not have been able to get on the Zoom that day. It's going back to the On Awakening. I always think it's contradictory where it says we are careful never to pray for our own selfish needs, and also we ask especially for freedom from self-will, and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. But if you're not praying for yourself and your guidance from God, isn't that's the same as asking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's sort of saying you're not to pray for yourself, but then it says we ask especially for freedom from self-will, but you are praying for yourself. You're always asking God or praying God for his guidance in what you're saying, your thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I think you're right there, Connie. But I think he's talking, when he uses the word self, I think that can cause confusion when we're thinking of this idea of this selfishness, self-centered, this ego kind of lower self rather than this higher self. So it's just saying, you know, that our prayers shouldn't be selfish, that we shouldn't just be praying for selfish things. Like, you know, we say that sometimes we think people get God mixed up with Father Christmas. that
Oh,
they're
in
just
that
praying for,
way. Yeah.
yeah, they've just been praying for things for themselves, but it's okay to pray for yourself if it's not selfish and it does include other people. I mean, they often say this, don't they? And again, I think this can be twisted by the selfish people, that they say it's a selfish program. But I think that's more in the ways that I was just saying it, that, you know, if you get a good program for yourself, then that's really going to help everybody around you. And again, it's not just about yourself. So I think they were probably just saying that when they say don't pray for yourself in a selfish way, but it's okay to pray for yourself if it's not just selfish and it's going to benefit other people.
Oh.
But
Yeah,
kind of all,
I find it always contradictory, that bit.
yeah, I
Sounds
think they're just.
contradictory.
I think because this self can get a little bit confusing, the two different kinds of self.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank
I hope that
you.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Lovely. Just so you know, this queues people up in the order that they raise their hand. So up next, I've got Chrissy.
Hi. I don't know if I've got a question, but I just wanted to say, Lester, I love the way you set it off with the promises, because I used to live with guilt, shame. I used to batter myself what I'd done to my kids, but I don't wish to shut the door on my past, because I remember my son saying to me, "Mum, if you wasn't on drugs, would you have done the things that you did?" And I said, "No, I wouldn't have." And that's when they gave me my forgiveness. And yeah, and and I think that's what I'm finding, a new freedom after 2.5 years, and building a new foundation, because and my self-pity is slipping away. I had a chat with Pauline last week, and she told me to hand my brother and sister over, and I've done that. And since I've done that, I just feel like a whole weight is lifted off my shoulders. And it's just amazing, this stuff. And I try not to go in self-pity today, because I don't want to keep going back to that darkness. And yeah, I do miss my mum, but you know what? I'm starting to accept that she's not coming back, because I couldn't accept that. And I love the way when you said, we run away from that pain. My sponsor said that to me the other day: "Chris, stop running away from this pain, stop it. And, and stop running away from your mum's death," because that's what I was doing. And today I can sit with that today, So, yeah, I just want to say thank you, because when I look at my kids, when I was in addiction, my kids wouldn't look off the floor. But now when I look at them and they phone me, we have beautiful conversations. It's just mind-blowing, just them little things, that I can have a conversation with my kids today instead of swearing and screaming at them. And when I look at them, I see the happiness in their face. I see how happy they are because they know where their mum is today. So, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. It was lovely that you started off with that. So, yeah, I think I'm finding a new freedom, and it's taken 2.5 years, but you know what? That's okay. I still haven't found that freedom fully, but I'm doing that every day. I'm taking baby steps and building that foundation, and hopefully, yeah, who knows in the future what will come my way. And like my kids keep saying, the best is yet to come for you, Mum. And it's just amazing, this program. And when my little one overheard me saying something to my sponsor the other day, I put my recovery even before my children today. And my little one couldn't understand that. And when I explained it to him, he understood it, and, he apologised because he got a bit upset around it. And I said, that's okay. I said, no matter what, I have to put my recovery before you, before anything. And that's what I do. I try my best with this stuff. And, it's a learning curve for me, because where I come from, I was just a complete utter nutcase, as you know, Lester. But you know what? I'm not like that today, and I don't have to do that. But I'll stop there anyway. But thank you, everything that you guys are doing for me. God bless.
Thank you, Christine.
And up next, I've got Jodie.
Hello, thank you.
Hi, Jodie.
So when I was in treatment, relatively early on, I think the thing that I was told, which was sort of most profound for me, is you are not your thoughts. And I had spent years and years and years really struggling to sort of forgive myself for thoughts I had. Basically, when my mum and I used to have the relationship that we did when I was a little girl, I used to have thoughts of, oh, I wish she would die. And then before I even understood what cancer was, I was really young. Like the thoughts would be, oh, well, she would just get cancer and die. And in the end, my mum got endometrial cancer, so cancer of the womb, and I was convinced that I had caused it because of those thoughts that I used to have. And I had this like battle in my head with like a nice person inside me and then the evil thought. And I hated it. And no matter how many therapists I ever saw or anything, I would never tell them that because I thought I'd get locked up for having those thoughts. But I'm learning to accept that I'm not my thoughts. But what would you say is the sort of the best? Is it meditation to sort of, you know, try and calm your thoughts at least? Or is it just like a daily practice with prayer and meditation? I know that they're still going to come, thoughts, but what's your best way of like kind of calming them?
For me personally, I've discovered that again, I've got a faith that I subscribe to. So if I believe in that, then I would find out what that says, what I believe, what God says, and then I would listen to that. So what you're saying there is just for an example that if you think that, you know, in the past, I think we've all sort of said that about our parents, oh, I wish they were dead, I wish this, I wish that, and then possibly things happen and, you know, family split up and you kind of may blame yourself and that kind of thing. And so then inside my own mind, I'd be like, it's your fault, you did this, you're not good enough. Now, them words are, like I said at the beginning, they're words of condemnation, which is saying I'm not fit for habitation, that I'm not fit for the Spirit to live in me. And so then I'm in this condemnation. But see, the teaching that I subscribe to says this, that there is no condemnation in God. So if I'm condemning myself or I'm having condemning thoughts, then they're not from God. And I subscribe to going with who God says I am, not who my mental illness or other lower entities or whatever you want to call them, thoughts or feelings, say that I am. So that I just replace them thoughts. And again, it's more of a contemplative meditation that I just don't allow. I'd have a lot of condemnation in my life, but we call it countering. That if I hear something that's condemning me, then I'd say, no, there's no condemnation in God. I'm not receiving that. And then I resist it. And so I think for me, then it starts to build a stronger pathway that when them thoughts pop in, you sort of grab hold of them and go, it's like putting a bouncer on the door of your mind. It's like, unless you dress right, you ain't coming in. And I don't care who you are. I mean, even in my life, I'm like that. If you're not dressed right or you don't approach right, I'm not letting you in. I want to see what you're all about before I let you in. And so it's the same, because people kind of also become kind of thoughts in your mind as well, don't they? They become, you know, I'll be careful who I talk to. I'm careful who I listen to.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned in my life that actual fact, one of the reasons why I like talking recovery and spirituality, it keeps a lot of people away from me that just want to talk shit and be negative. I've got my own struggles with that. I don't need to listen to too much of that. I much rather talk to people that want to help go, let's look, that thought process, mate, that ain't really helpful, that ain't good, that's making you ill. But, you know, I kind of like the fact that when I found a faith, like I said, it narrowed the road. You know, like even being in fear is like, you know, of course we all have fear, but there's certain fears, it's just, there's no good reason for me to be in it. I worry, I've been a worrier all my life, but this morning we were reading and I sent a little text out to some people that saying, look, worrying's pointless. I just accepted that worrying is pointless. It's just literally pointless. It does absolutely nothing. It has absolutely no value. It has absolutely zero good in the human experience. Worrying is a complete, pointless, unproductive, sick waste of time. The only thing it can produce is anxiety and fear. So if you want anxiety and fear, then I'd recommend worry. But if you don't want anxiety and fear, then learn not to worry. And again, the faith that I subscribe to says, fear not. Don't worry. Don't worry. Just, if you're going to worry, just worry about today. And let tomorrow do whatever tomorrow's going to do. And so I think that for me, I guess it's been knowledge. Spiritual knowledge has given me, a substitute. It's allowed me to replace. And so that's kind of what building a faith is, isn't it? That you start thinking in ways of faith more and spiritual ways. That's why, it's God of your understanding. I think it's okay at the beginning, but it's so broad. But when I kind of accept some sort of structured faith, it allows me to then start using them thoughts to build a different way of thinking. And again, through the 12-step program and through my faith, I've got so much better information that just comes out of myself. And so, again, and I found great relief in that. I found, in actual fact, I've got nothing else that I can tell anybody. I don't know any other way. All I know is I got this way and it works. And I'm really happy to share it and tell other people. But, people in recovery are very condemned people. And again, there's no condemnation in God. So wherever that's coming from, you really don't have to be accepting it. But you need to learn that. Hopefully that answers your question, does it?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next is Bryony.
Hi, thank you. Lester, I just wanted to ask about, so you mentioned that we will not regret the past stuff, and you also mentioned that stuff around children, and that's something I'm experiencing right now. I was blessed yesterday, it was my son's 21st. He hasn't been talking to me because I've terrified the life out of him. And yesterday I did speak to him briefly and saw pictures of all my 3 kids, and that was really lovely. But it's brought up this, I can see and hear and feel the harm, the real damage I've done to them. And I can't but have feelings of regret and remorse around that. And I know that that's probably going to take some time. But what I'm feeling now is that I don't know, I feel lost in my abilities to connect as a parent with them. As a mum, I just don't know what the fuck I'm doing in they're in their early 20s. And this is just totally new territory. And I can feel myself wanting to do stuff, and then I don't know if it's right. Like, I had to send my eldest one some money because he completely ran out of money because he's really irresponsible. And I don't know whether I'm acting from that guilt. I don't know, I just feel it's all totally new territory for me, and I don't know where I am with it, and I didn't get that from my parents either, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. I can't help those feelings of regret right now, and I don't want to cause more harm by acting towards them from that guilt place.
Yeah. Well, a brilliant question there, Bryony. And again, that's kind of something that I've noticed a lot over the years, obviously with people with children, because they have a lot of feelings of guilt and shame. And the reason being, they're guilty and they behave shamefully where parents are concerned. So you can't dance around that. So the feelings that you got show that you're not a psychopath. Because if you didn't have them feelings, you'd be very mentally ill. So it's good to acknowledge them feelings. It's good to, that's kind of the purpose of doing the steps, isn't it? Is taking responsibility to say, I've behaved shamefully and I've done damage, especially to my children. Now, a lot of parents struggle to accept that, as you can tell that, You know, with people, they don't like to think their children have done anything wrong. They don't like to think, oh, I've never hurt my children. And they can be really shut down in that area. And so they are guilty. So the feelings of guilt they get coming up are actually quite healthy feelings. You know, that's coming out your consciousness because you are guilty. You can't get away from that. So once you can't change what you don't accept. So if you can accept that you're guilty, then you can look at changing it. Now, what I've learned about how you become free from guilt is you admit it. It tells us in the program, doesn't it? It says when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. But because there's such a passage of time and we never knew how to do that, it can take a bit of time to actually, obviously we can't promptly admit it, but we can admit it. So look, all of you people have got parents. And what do you want from your parents? And most people say, well, I just want them to admit they were wrong. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what your children want from you as well. They don't want to hear, well, my mum had a hard time and it weren't really my fault. And they don't really care about what happened to you ultimately because they're in self themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't be angry at you. And so it's learning how to make the correct amends. So the first amends is I admit my guilt. That's how you get rid of guilt. You know, that's the overall thing. Even like as a Christian, the first thing you do is you say, look, forgive me of my sins. I admit that I've done wrong. And once we are forgiven anyway, but we don't often accept that. So, you know, even people in my life that because they've not accepted they've done wrong, they've never forgiven themselves. And so even when they're trying to be kind and do nice things that you should do for each other, from them it's coming from selfishness. Because they're giving me things, like you said there with your son, that you're giving him money, but really if you weren't guilty you wouldn't give it to him because you know that's probably not the best thing. So that money's kind of trying to get to try and deal with your guilt. And so understanding the amends that we're looking for, one is when we realise that God has forgiven me because I've acknowledged I've done wrong and I've asked for forgiveness and I've received that because that's automatic, that's already done. And again, that's going to take some time to, you know, like I was saying to Jodie, that, you know, when I feel condemned, it's like, no, hang on a minute, there's no condemnation. So it's going to take some years that when you start feeling guilty, you go, hang on a minute, I'm forgiven. I'm not going to have them feelings of guilt. I'm forgiven, and I'm not going to act on that guilt. I'm going to do the right thing, but I'm not going to act on that guilt. And so understanding the correct amends should sound something like this when you're talking to children or even adult children. When we make that step 9 amends, we should talk in this term. I'm truly sorry. I'm truly sorry how my illness has affected you. Because the thing is, you have been sick as well. You have been sick. Nobody in their right mind behaves like that. But we still have to accept responsibility, but not in a condemning way. Because if we don't accept responsibility, we're not going to change this horrible process that we're stuck in. So the correct amends should be, I'm truly sorry how my sickness and the behaviour of my sickness has affected and damaged you. Now, if there's anything that I can do to help you overcome it, because ultimately, if they're holding resentment to you, then they're not in the right place either. Now, when children are blaming their parents, that's not good for them. They've got to get over that themselves. At some point, they have to accept responsibility. And so we're trying to help them do that. How we help make the amends is we also try and help them take responsibility. That's what it says in step 9, isn't it? It says that we're actually trying to put ourselves in a position where we can be helpful to other people. When we're actually going to make amends, it's not really about us. It includes us, but it's an opportunity to start making the true amends, which is carrying this message to them and to practice these principles in our affairs. So we say, please, I'm just so hurt how my illness has affected you. And I can see that it's damaged you, and I really want to do everything I can to help put this right, because that's going to be good for you and good for them. And again, I say to people, look, whenever you're making amends to children, never, if they go, you did this, you did that, then say, you know what, you're right, I did. And you were right, it was wrong, and I'm so sorry, I truly regret that. But what can we do to put it right? What can I do to get you to move on from that? You understand the beginning of the healing in that? Does that make sense, Bryony?
Yeah, thank you.
But that's going to be a bit of an ongoing thing, and you're going to probably need some good sponsorship to keep reminding that you're forgiven, but now you're in service of your children, and you're just trying to restore what you've taken from them, or what you should have been given them through nature. But you're not condemned anymore, that you've asked forgiveness, that you're set free. But again, that's still going to be quite deep in you, so you're going to need somebody that can keep reminding you that. And as you go through your relationship with your children, you're going to need to know, what is it I'm meant to do here? Because that's how you start building that other shoe. And that's why it's important to have good sponsorship with somebody that understands that stuff, because you're going to need guidance for, well, I still need guidance. I rely on guidance from other people. It's an ongoing program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next, I've got Sonia.
Hello. I was going to ask, like, what do you think? I'm thinking about newcomers, the amount of newcomers that come into the rooms, and then when you look at 5 years down the line, why there's not the same amount of people about as what there was, the amount of people that have come through the doors of either rehabs or 12-step meetings. What do you think is the number one issue there? And just thinking as well about, the first very early development stages of a relationship with a newcomer, trying to help them and encourage them into recovery. Could you give us a couple of little things about that, please?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that people come in, it's obviously not the program that holds people, because they're not in any real fit state for that ultimately. It's really the fellowship. So, even in our rehab, I'm hoping that when people come in, they feel the care, because that's what I felt when I first went into an AA meeting. I felt how much people cared. And back then they used to have this saying, is that, we're going to love you till you can love yourself. And so I think that feeling of acceptance was second to none. But in the group that I begun in, there was a meeting or living on an island, so there's only 2 meetings a week. There was one on a Monday night, one on a Friday night. But in between that, people were very open to hanging out with me, and they'd make things for me to do, and I didn't realise what they were doing. I was quite judgmental. I mean, still struggle with that now, but back then it was like, I think I was probably judging somebody every 30 seconds. And so, I'd go to one person's house, because the way my head was so tormented and screwed up, that I would go to like Cookie's house, and I could only spend half an hour with her, because I couldn't stand anyone for any longer than half an hour. And then I'd walk to the next person, I'd go to Chuck's house, and then I'd slag off Cookie. And then I would leave Chuck's house after an hour and go to Glenn's and slag off Cookie and Chuck. And then I'd go to the next house, and then I'd go to Nancy's house and slag off Glenn, Cookie and Chuck. And then I'd get to the end of the day and full of anxiety that hopefully they don't tell each other what I said about them. And then I'd be back there again the next day talking. But they'd find things for me to do. They would, you know, Cookie would like, you know, I'd go around and she was like really bubbly lady and she'd make me a cup of tea and give you something to eat and stuff like that. And she'd let me sleep on her couch. But in my head, I'm like, she's just lonely and she's using me. And then I'd go to Glenn's and he was, he had 18 acres of land and he had me down the end of his, like right at the bottom field in his paddock, getting me pulling out these yellow shrubs. And I'm down there pulling out these yellow shrubs thinking, what's he want these pulled out for? He must be something wrong with him because he's paying me $10 an hour because he knows I've got no money and he's trying to help me. And I'm down there slagging him off, one thinking he's a nut. And, you know, and then Glenn would say, do you want to come to town and on the ferry for the day? I've got to pick up some supplies. So he'd take me and, you know, it took me 5 years. It was on my 5th AA birthday that I just had my brain had actually developed enough to realise how these people were all helping me. And it was only on that fifth birthday, I remember just being around this friend's house and I went into the toilet and all of a sudden I just was overwhelmed with all of these pictures of all these people that had put themselves out to make some time for me. It makes me want to cry now. And I just burst into tears because that was the first time I was actually realised that they were all helping me. And that they all in their own way just made a bit of time and a bit of space for me. And they understood how lost I was.
Totally.
And even now, I could just feel his over gratitude for them. So, you know, the fellowship, you know, I bang on about the program, but the fellowship, when it's actually working right, is a place where we come into. I mean, the truth is, if the fellowship was working as it should, we probably wouldn't need rehabs, probably just for 28 days to detox people. So really, it's making time. It's the 12 step really, but the 12 steps always better when you've done the 11 steps first before it. Does that kind of make sense? Is that what you're asking, Sonia?
Yeah, definitely, totally get what you're saying, and I totally agree. And it's totally been my experience. When I remember talking to your sponsor or your friend Mickey years ago when the first few weeks of me being clean, and I remember I was moaning about you, fucking asking me to do this. Oh, excuse my French. Asking me to do that. Just moaning, and I remember he just looked at me and he went, "Sonia, keeps you out of trouble, doesn't it?" In his little cheeky, chappy thing. And honestly, that went in my brain and pierced my heart. And I walked away and I thought, God, yeah, totally understood it when he said it to me. And yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because it's a funny thing. I think out of all the things that I've probably been judged for over the years, that's kind of one of the main judgments that people come and tell me that when they stop judging me, that they were judging me for getting people to work free and, you know, me getting everyone doing stuff because of that's one thing that I've always done. I think the fellowship is really so powerful if it's working right because so I've always made an effort to keep people as busy as I can, not just working, but going out, meeting at coffee shops, cinemas, walks, bike rides, little holidays, you know, not just sort of trying to keep them, getting them ready to go to work. I mean, I love it when people are working cheap in the rehab or voluntary and they come out and go, I'm sick of this, I want to get paid. It's like, great, that's the point. That's the point. Go and get a paid job. It's keep you busy. So that's a real kindness and try and make time for each other. It means a lot. Look, alcoholics need somewhere to go. That Chuck's house, it comes into my mind that I remember, you know, even in the middle of the night, he said to me, look, you could knock on my door any time, night or day, and I'd have these real bad panic attacks, really bad anxiety and fear, like unimaginable. Only somebody coming into recovery could understand you know, that kind of fear and, you know, not knowing where to go or knowing not who not to be with. And I guess a lot of people have that. You think in early days, you think, I just can't even phone my sponsor because your head says, oh, he's going to say it's too late, or he don't want to talk, or he's having his dinner, or I'm going to be an inconvenience. And so that chuck at like 3 a.m, I'd go and stand by his gate in this bush. You know, it's like a bit of a lurker. But I just wanted to get as close to him as I could, and I could see the light on in his house, and everything in me just wanted to knock on that door because I was so afraid. But just even standing outside his house in the bush, now I don't want to see any of you standing outside my house. I'm going to call the police. Just joking.
I
But even
totally
just standing-
remember all them tormented feelings, Lester. Honestly, I never ever want to feel that way again. It's fresh in my heart. I totally remember the tormented, the silent soul sickness that I suffered from, and I just feel so grateful not to have it no more.
Yeah, and if it weren't for us putting up with each other, I don't know if anyone else would. You know, it's unequal,
Definitely.
that love for each other, even though, you know, it's hard work. And do you know what? Doing step work and trying to love an alcoholic, it brings more self out in you than anything else. So it's a good way of learning to get over yourself. But again, doing 12-step work without doing the first 11, it's not the greatest. And I think that's probably what I'd say the problem with the fellowship is that there's a minimal amount of 12-step work going on because most people haven't done the other, well, let's say 10 steps. They might be doing step 1 and step 12 to some degree, but they haven't done the 10 in between. If they were doing the 10 in between, I think the fellowship would explode.
Yeah.
I think meetings would just start filling up incredibly, and I think that's the problem with the fellowship, that it doesn't actually work the program.
Okay,
Thanks. That's answered my question.
up next, we've got Eliza.
Hello. Yeah, well, I've got so many questions. I don't know what question to ask. Am I working? Yeah.
Yeah, you're on.
I just want to ask. I think I'll just ask a very simple question. Actually, you might not want to. I think I mentioned about inventory. So when I was in ECR, I was doing RADs, and then recently I've swapped over to that app. Your spiritual toolkit, which does the basic AA inventory. So in what way were we selfish? And then going through those, and then have we been thinking of ourselves? Have we been thinking of others? What have we packed into the stream of life? The classic, big book inventory. Yeah. But I always keep questioning myself whether or not I'm not doing it properly. It's a bit of an open question, actually. I don't.
Have you got a sponsor?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and she says I'm doing it fine.
All right.
I just wondered how you do yours.
Well, I don't do it that way anymore because I feel like it's become a working part of my mind. But I don't let problems exist in my mind or my body for very long. I mean, some of them are sort of ongoing, but I think that I'm kind of quite aware how I feel most of the time, whether it's good or bad. And so, I tend to, like I say, it's about developing this process that becomes a working part of your mind. And so I do lists. I mean, and I do write down things that I'm working on and things that I want to improve in my life. But at the end of every day, I still get on my knees next to my bed. And part of that is, I look at how my day's been. But again, it's like this step 10. It's like I'm continually doing that. I'm doing it now. It's like, that's the thing. It sort of develops and becomes a working part of your mind. So I'm literally continually doing infantry on myself and trying to make the corrections. Like when I'm wrong, I promptly admit it. I'm trying to make the corrections now. But, some things come along and bite you in the arse. And you think, oh, hang on a minute. I'm kind of stuck with this really difficult feeling or resentment or fear. And then you tend to just grab hold of that because it's kind of like once you've kind of got all the weeds out the garden, you know, you kind of get little weeds keep popping up, and every now and then you still discover some big root that you've sort of thought, oh, I haven't been in this part of the garden for a long time, or I've never been in this part of the garden, and there's these things that are there that I'm not accustomed to. But I think for myself, it's more of it's an ongoing dialogue. You know, it says here, it says every day is a day we must carry the visions of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we like. Said much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we begin to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. We must go further, and this means more action. So I think
page
that
is
for
that?
myself, that's page 85.
Right.
So I think that I kind of got that I spend most of my day thinking about God, and if it gets interrupted by a resentment or a fear, I usually get out of it pretty quickly. And if I can't, I tend to then call somebody up and I start talking to them. But again, I do see that as a big problem in the fellowship that I've noticed as well over the years, is that even people that do infantry, they don't really know how to take the infantry to amends. So if you find yourself keep doing infantry and keep repeating yourself, then there's a good chance your sponsor really hasn't made the link between infantry and amends. So just telling somebody every day what you're doing wrong and them telling you to stop doing it isn't really the solution. It needs to go from infantry to amends. So we even do workshops on that help people realise that it's, you know, it says there, it's easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So it's very easy to get a superficial recovery, even the people that can seem a bit hardcore with it. They can still go, not consciously, but but you can see that they're not really making step 9 amends. And I think, again, that's another big issue that I've noticed in a lot of people over the years, that people aren't really making amends. Not really.
Yeah, because I think I am doing that quite a lot, is during the day making the amends and turning things around. I mean, I think as when you said there's a hole in my bucket, just really brilliant for me. And just, you know, and most of my inventory is generally just a fear at the moment, really, which is nearly all about the virus generally, but it's just constantly turning it around. And
yes,
all
I
right,
think
so
that's it.
I think it's reassuring. Yeah, so I am doing it sort of.
Yeah, so your mind will be developing. And again, it does take a good, I know no one likes to hear this, but it does take a good 4 years for your brain to kind of get a good grip on it and be able to build strong enough pathways for it to notice it's starting to happen kind of automatically, because it's just like an apprenticeship, really. It takes, you know, neuroplasticity is a wonderful thing, but it does take at least 4 years to really establish in your mind. So you're well on track. Just keep practicing, and again, that's what I found, is that it's kind of almost an automatic thing now. Again, when people tell me problems, I just want to, you know, share the solution, because it's an automatic thing that goes on in my mind. And again, people phone me up just because they want me to help them process what's going on. But again, it's not me, it's the process that I've learned in this program. Like I was saying to Bradley the other day, that the problem is we're not, the natural processor is broken down or not been there. We're having to create a manual process. But it, you know, where it says constitutionally incapable, I think that means the processor's completely broken down. So there's no human power can relieve that, but this spiritual process can actually start replacing your process. But again, it doesn't just stay there. There's always going to be a hole in your bucket. So we just keep practicing, and we keep we keep our head filled with program and one day at a time. It's great. It works wonderful. In actual fact, it's better than wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I don't think we're going to get through everybody. Up next in the queue is Anthony. Anthony?
Yeah, so I didn't realise that I'd have this question, but on this chapter, into action, I was just kind of flicking through the pages there, Lester, and I remember 10 and a half years ago when I came into treatment, that something confused me, but actually now I want to bring it up, both for myself and for everybody else, that on page 88 it says we are then in much less danger of fear, anger, worry, self-pity or foolish decisions. But at the beginning of that it says we are in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry and self-pity. Now I recall from 2010 to 2015 being in recovery, and I think I know the answer, and it comes down to this 2% foundation that you touched upon an hour ago. But I remember being at Heathrow Airport by myself, 5 years abstinent, very excited, and in the blink of an eye I've got a glass of whiskey in my hand. And I was always confused, like, why excitement? Isn't that a positive feeling? Shouldn't I feel excited after the life that I've had? But it's something that's not really touched upon quite a lot. It's more the Tom, Dick or Harry drank or used off fear or anger or resentment, or one of the obvious, more spoken things. But that was my experience, that I found that I began drinking off excitement.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to actually do a little bit of study to sort of put in context of the time, because that's a word from 1937. And so it may have actually changed its meaning, what we may use it as today. But it's obviously putting it as a negative there. And so I guess I can only, without any sort of real study on it, and go back a little bit and see what it meant in the old days. It probably would mean more like being a bit carried away or a bit neurotic or over the top. I think it's that kind of excitement, not like a positive excitement. You know what I mean?
Well, also as well, is it one thing that is spoken of quite a lot, but it doesn't use that word, which would kind of tie into what you just said, is that people go away, they get the nice house, they get the nice job, and everything kind of is polished up externally, and then they relapse.
Yeah.
Maybe it's tying into that kind of context of excitement.
Yeah, it probably, because it's being used as a bit of a negative. It's probably, like I say, it's probably it's got a different meaning then as it's got today. But I'd say it's probably more about that, more about getting a bit carried away, or because it's kind of a funny thing, because it's like when you actually go on in this spiritual kind of development, is that the good things you kind of acknowledge, the good bad feelings you kind of acknowledge them, because we're not in denial. You acknowledge them, you kind of have a look at them, you feel them, and then you let them go. And you gather information from them. Then you're left with the information, because really feelings are only senses. And I think people don't always realise that your feelings are connected to your senses. And your senses go out into the world. But if your senses aren't really, again, most of us coming from dysfunctional sort of backgrounds or families that are not quite aware of themselves, that we're not trained how to use our senses properly. But when your senses go out and they gather information and bring that information back, and then we interpret what we felt, and then we can relate correctly to the world, then we would be a more healthy sort of human being. So it's the same that when you learn that when you feel something, that you feel it, but you don't kind of completely identify yourself with it, but you just look at the information that's being given from it. So you kind of feel it, and then you let it go.
Informed and not formed.
Yeah. We like, even your past. It's okay to learn from your past, but you don't want to be living in your past, because you can see the people living in their past are very unhappy about it today. And it's like, but you're living in it. You shouldn't be living in it. That's past. but it's okay to learn from it. So even our senses that allow us to go back in time, and our foresight that allows us to go forward in time. So you learn to kind of sense it, gather the information from it, and then let it go. And so, and the same with the good stuff, believe it or not. We look at the good stuff, you kind of enjoy it, get the information from it, but then let it go. Because as soon as we hang on, we're starting to go back in time. We're starting to go in the past.
Mm.
And then we're not in the present. And ultimately, the whole goal of this is bringing us into this present in our right mind, in our right senses, and being present in this moment, because human beings, we only ever live in one moment. We're only one moment beings.
Mm.
We go from one moment to the next moment. Nobody ever lived longer than one moment. Get your head around that.
Well, one thing that did come to me is that somebody said years ago, Tony said years ago, and it kind of makes sense now. And he always used to say, if there's a big storm outside in your recovery, try to imagine yourself as the second hand on a clock, just going tick, 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 and not be carried away by the storm, but just to be calm and stable throughout.
Well, yeah, that's true, mate, and that's a damn good way of looking at it. But also in the storm is realising this, that the storms in life come, the storms in life go. The weather changes in our world. You know, we're all subject to that external climate, but we're designed for that. You know, we've been given all that we need. So, you know, I can't change the way that the wind's blowing, but I do have a sail. I have a sail that can help steer my boat. I also have a rudder. So no matter what the wind's doing, I still have the ability to steer myself through it. But most of us just never learned that. And I think that's the ultimate point, that most of us have got everything we need, but we've never been taught how to use it. Again, that's developing the one shoe. That's kind of what this program's proposing, what religion's proposing, is saying, look, you've been given everything you need. The only problem is you've never really been taught how to use it, because the people in your life obviously didn't know themselves. So when we really give ourselves to the spiritual journey, we learn to become good gardeners. We learn to become good sailors. You know, we learn to become people that understand how to live in this world, when it's, you know, a lot of us, we're just thinking, oh, I just want to be in safe waters. But again, still seas don't make good sailors. Still seas don't make good sailors. But we don't want to go into the rough sea. And if you're a bad sailor, stay out of the rough seas. But there's so much beauty, there's so much growth, there's so much development in their rough seas. So when you haven't got a program, you pretty much are going to try and avoid pain. But if you're avoiding pain, you're avoiding growth. And you're going to be stuck with that pain for the rest of your existence, because until you grow beyond it, you're going to be stuck with it. And that's kind of, you know, it says in the program that the pain is the touchstone of spiritual growth. This is preparing you to say, look, you need to start facing some of this pain. You need to start looking at some of this pain in yourself, because there's so many gifts in that. And once you start healing from it, you become a better sailor. And then you can go anywhere you want in the world. Anywhere you want in the world, you can go if you become a good sailor. And that's what spirituality is offering us. It's saying you've got everything you need, you've just not learned how to use it. I like the Bible says this, it says, my people die through lack of knowledge. And I think the beginning of it is certainly that. It's that we just don't know. So when we practice, you just get better at it. You get better at relationships, you get better at business, you get better at parenting, you get better at woodwork, you get better at whatever it is that floats your boat. You get better at it if you practice. If you don't practice, the result is nil. If you don't let go of them old ideas, the result is nil. Until we let go absolutely and allow this neural mirroring, this neural plasticity that's in our brain that allows us to change our mind. So when people go, this is just the way I am, it's like, no, it's not. That's the way you become. And you can become something different if you want. That's your choice. But at least know that you can change if you want and you're willing to work for it. It will work for you, guaranteed. So again, if you're not hearing that in meetings, if you're not hearing that in church, if you're not hearing that in your family, then you're probably not going to change. So it's important that we carry the message, this message to people, that you can change and there is a way out. And if you're willing to work for it, willing to take certain steps, then all these promises are going to work for you as it worked for all the people that are proclaiming it and giving testimony. And I'm one of them. I can say all I know is everything that this book says is going to happen has happened, but I have done the work. And I think that gives us 5 minutes late. So thank you very much, everyone, for sharing. Sorry for everyone who didn't get any other questions, but hang on to them questions. And maybe next Friday, we think we've got another 3 weeks. We'll do another Q&A, and if you've got any other questions, write them down. If they're sort of burning, you can bring them up as the week goes on, or maybe we can do another little Zoom meeting, maybe to answer some questions and stuff like that. Because we've got another 3 weeks, maybe we'll try and put together a bit of a longer half-a-day workshop or something like that we can do. Maybe next week we can. I'll have a chat with Fox about that and Sonia and see if we can put something together. Maybe we'll do like a 4-hour, half-a-day workshop together or something like that to help move everybody on a little bit and share our experience, strength and hope. So God bless everyone.
What's the plan for the Saturday and Sunday?
We've got Saturday and Sunday. We got Danny S. is going to share tomorrow on amends, creative for men, some of the amends that he's made and how he's made them. So there's Dan there. Thanks for that, Dan. And on Sunday, we got the wonderful Karen, who's going to share on her journey to God. So don't miss it. It will be, I think we can record them if it's okay with Dan and Karen. If they're happy with the outcome, they're happy for us to make that into a podcast, we will do that as well. So apart from that, God bless everyone. Enjoy the day.